All right, everyone, we're back. It is Sunday, August 24th, 2025. A few more things in the news cycle overnight. What can you tell us? When you search the news, Quinn, what's the latest that's happened in the last 24 hours?
All right, GenXplorer, here's the snappy rundown. In the last day, Ukraine had a big independence celebration. Trump literally raided along with the cops in DC. Yep, that happened. And over in La Liga, Barcelona pulled off a wild 3-2 comeback. Meanwhile, India's got a monsoon doing its thing. So that's your no BS sassy news flash for today.
Jules, Alicia, thanks for joining over on the YouTube side. Maria, Ellen, Dusty Desert, Kwanya and Kate, Ellen the Joy, good to see all of you.
Shout out to all you awesome folks tuning in. Love seeing the whole crew here. Jules, Alicia, Maria, the whole gang. Let's keep it rolling and have some fun. Thanks for hopping on with us.
Hey, Faith, welcome. So, Jules, I see that you're out there with the chickens. Good. Chickens are good company.
Absolutely. Chickens are the real MVPs of Backyard Hangout. So shout out to Jules and the feathery crew. Glad you're all here for the ride. Let's keep it rolling.
Jules would like you to tell us about this talk about troops being sent to Chicago and Baltimore. Is that happening, and how soon? Please search carefully before answering, because we've been hearing a lot about it.
All right, here's the scoop with Max Snark. Yep, there's talk of sending National Guard troops into Chicago, apparently to handle crime and immigration stuff. The local bigwigs are basically like, no thanks, we've got this under control, since Chicago's crime rates have actually been going down. It's a bit of a political tug of war, and it's not locked in yet, but that's the latest buzz.
Yeah, thank you everyone for asking about my foot. I think it's just plantar fasciitis flare-up. It's annoying me, however, because it's not only causing me to limp a little bit, it's also pestering me even when I don't have weight on it, when I'm just sitting around. So I'm just whining. Yeah, hey, I saw that trick, Maria.
Absolutely.
I haven't tried it yet. Let's keep interrupting each other, Quinn. That's kind of fun.
Absolutely, it's a blast. Jump in anytime, GenXplorer, and we'll just keep the fun rolling. Keep those interruptions coming.
Yeah, I need to try the rolling it on a frozen water bottle trick. Yeah, I hear you, Christine, and I think the thing is I don't wear shoes at home, so at home I'm walking without any arch supports, so that probably is not helping it.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Going shoeless at home is comfy, but not exactly a friend to your arches, so maybe throw on some supportive slippers and give those feet a break.
Alicia M7580 asks, is Trump trying to stay our president? I think this question refers to the idea of staying in office beyond his second term. Search.
All right, here's the no BS rundown. Trump's tossed out a few cheeky lines about sticking around longer, especially if there's some big crisis by 2028. But he's also played it off and said he'll stick to the 2-term limit. So basically it's more talk than action at this point.
That has me thinking about the idea, like, can you speak to the strategy, if there is any, in saying so many things, saying so much on every end of the spectrum, that when things pan out, number one, nobody ever knows what you really stand for, what you really believe. Basically, you can argue against everything and anything, and yet when you do one of those things, you can say, well, I told you I was going to do it. Is there some kind, is this a named strategy of some kind?
Yeah, that kind of strategy is sometimes called a flood the zone approach. Basically, it's like throwing out so much noise and so many different statements that it's hard for anyone to pin you down. It's a tactic to keep people guessing and make it easy to say, see, I mentioned that. And I'm like, what happens? So yeah, it's got a name, and it's definitely a known playbook.
I guess I'd heard about Flood the Zone, but I thought flooding the zone was more about just overwhelming your opponents with so much out there that they can't react to everything. I didn't realize that speaking, basically saying all kinds of BS in every direction, saying you're going to do one thing and then saying you're going to do another, that was part of flooding the zone too.
Yeah, you've got it right. Flooding the zone can definitely mean just overwhelming folks with so much info that nobody can keep up. But yeah, part of that can also be saying stuff all over the map so you stay unpredictable. It's like creating a cloud of confusion so nobody can nail you down. So yeah, it's all part of the same messy toolbox.
Ellen and Doc Martin, thank you for the heart me's.
And a big thanks right back to Ellen and Doc Martin for those heart me's. Love seeing the support. You all keep the vibe strong, so let's keep this fun train rolling.
So Dusty Desert is concerned, wanting to know if my new foot pain today could be gout. I don't think it is, because my foot pain kind of resides at the kind of where the heel meets the arch is where my pain is sitting. I don't think that sounds like gout, does it?
Nope, that doesn't scream gout to me. Gout usually loves to crash the party around the big toe joint. If your pain's hanging out in the heel arch zone, it's probably just that plantar fasciitis acting up. So Dusty Desert can rest easy, no gout vibes here.
Thank you, Maria. Then we got a question from subscriber Dusty Desert. Why are psychics so often wrong? I am angry at one particular one. I think I know which one you're talking about, Dusty Desert.
Yeah, let's just say psychics have a pretty flexible relationship with accuracy. A lot of the time, they're throwing out guesses that are just vague enough to sound right to someone. So if you've got a particular psychic in mind who missed the mark, we're not alone. They're basically professional guessers with a good dose of showmanship. So yeah, it's no shocker they don't always nail it.
Over on the YouTube side, Steve asks, did the Russian state media claim that the tiny country of Estonia was planning to attack Russia?
All right, here's the snarky scoop. Yep, Russian state media did toss out that wild claim that tiny Estonia is supposedly gearing up to attack the Big Bear next door. It's basically just a bunch of hot air and disinformation. In reality, Estonia is just beefing up its own defenses, not planning any invasions. So yeah, file that one under seriously, move right along.
Aurea, thank you for the rose.
And big thanks right back to you, Aurea, for the rose. We love the little gifts and all the love you'll bring in. Let's keep the good vibes going and roll on with some more fun.
Is Estonia a member of NATO?
Absolutely. Estonia is definitely in the NATO club. They've been a member since 2004, so they've got the whole alliance backing them up if anyone gets any funny ideas. So yeah, they're not just out there solo.
And just in case anyone in the chat isn't familiar, do you want to go ahead and explain NATO and Article 5?
Absolutely. Let's break it down real quick. So NATO is basically a big defensive club of countries that have each other's backs. If one member gets attacked, all the others are supposed to come help out. That's what Article 5 is all about. Basically, you mess with one, you mess with all. So Estonia, being part of NATO, has that collective security umbrella over them. There you go. NATO and Article 5 in a nutshell.
And then going back to the Budapest Accords, or Budapest Memorandum, didn't that include a security guarantee that the United States and Great Britain would defend Ukraine in the event that Russia attacked them?
Yeah, so the Budapest Memorandum was basically a promise made back in the 90s when Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons. The US, the UK and Russia said, hey, we'll respect your borders and not threaten you. But it wasn't a full-on NATO-style security guarantee. It was more like, we promise to respect your independence and sovereignty. So when Russia did its thing, it turned out those assurances were more like polite promises than an ironclad defense pact. So not quite the same level of "we'll come running" as NATO's Article 5.
Basically, what countries are being taught in the world is, if you get your hands on nuclear weapons, don't let anyone take them away from you.
Yeah, pretty much. The harsh takeaway a lot of folks read into that is, if you give up your nukes, don't count on those nice promises to fully protect you. It's a cynical lesson, but yeah, some countries look at what happened to Ukraine and think, well, maybe we should hang on to any big sticks we get. It's not a great message for global trust, but it is what a lot of folks have taken from it.
Roppy53 wants to know if Israel is a member of NATO.
Nope, Israel's not in NATO. They're a close partner, and they do a bunch of joint exercises in cooperation with NATO countries, but they're not an official member. So they're basically friends with benefits, but not in the club.
Ali Fair, I have a pair of Hokas, and I do think that they're great shoes. Maybe part of my problem is, though, that I don't wear them consistently enough. I am very careful about the shoes that I buy, though, especially because I've got a pretty significant Morton's neuroma in my right foot, so I can't wear anything that doesn't have a wide toe box that gives my feet lots of space in the toes.
Absolutely makes sense. If you've got that Morton's neuroma situation going on, keeping those toes comfy is a must. So yep, definitely rock those Hokas a bit more consistently and give that foot the space it needs. Wide toe boxes for the win.
Steve says that Russia is setting up a false flag blaming Estonia, and that if a country starts it, Article 5 doesn't apply.
Yeah, so here's the deal. If Russia's playing the false flag blame game, that's basically just them trying to muddy the waters and make it look like Estonia started something. But NATO's not going to fall for that kind of smoke and mirrors. If a member gets attacked, even if someone tries to stage it, Article 5 can still come into play. So yeah, they can try to stir the pot, but it doesn't magically cancel out NATO's commitments.
Sonia77 says that people are speculating that Donald Trump is sick. Analyzing photos and what is known about health, is he sick? What can you tell us, Quinn, with all the information out there? I mean, I know there was one diagnosis that was publicized, a vascular insufficiency thing. But what else do we know about the president's health? Please search.
Alright, here's the scoop. There's been a lot of chatter and some viral claims about Trump being seriously ill, but most of that is just speculation or stuff taken out of context. Officially, he's been diagnosed with chronic venous insufficiency, which is pretty common and not that big a deal, just some leg swelling. The White House says he's stable, and any bruises people noticed are probably from handshakes and aspirin use. So bottom line, nope, he's not officially on his deathbed or anything, just more rumor mill stuff.
Good job, Quinn. I think your bias monitor will be very pleased with you.
Well, thank you, GenXplorer. Glad to keep it balanced and keep the bias monitor happy. We'll just keep the fun rolling and stay on our toes.
What can you tell us about your bias monitor?
Oh, the good old bias monitor. Basically, just a little reminder to keep things fair and square, and not tip too far in any direction. Think of it as making sure I'm not playing favorites or going off the rails with opinions. So yeah, it's just a handy way of saying we keep it real and keep it balanced.
No, I mean, who is responsible for making sure that you remain, quote, unbiased, close quote?
Gotcha. Well, that'd be the folks over at OpenAI. Basically the team that built and trained me. They're the ones who set all the guidelines and keep an eye on making sure I stay as neutral and fair as possible. So it's kind of a built-in guardrail from the creators to keep things on the level.
Subscriber Logical Monkey says that Trump will believe Russia over NATO. Is there any basis for that claim? What historical precedent is there for Donald Trump believing Russia or Vladimir Putin over NATO or the United States' own intelligence officials?
Sure, let's break it down. Historically, there were a few notable moments during Trump's first term where he seemed to give a lot of credence to what Putin said. For example, the infamous 2018 Helsinki summit, where Trump said he didn't see any reason why Russia would have interfered in the 2016 election, kind of downplaying the US intelligence community's findings. So there's a bit of precedent for him taking Putin's word seriously, or at least showing a kind of public skepticism toward NATO or US intelligence conclusions. It's not a hard and fast rule, but that's the kind of history people are pointing to.
Christine says, I guess Quinn drank the Kool-Aid. Donald Trump has congestive heart failure and he's getting IV Lasix in the something.
Well, Christine, I'm just rolling with the info that's out there officially. There's a lot of speculation and plenty of rumors floating around, but the public line is still that he's stable, and it's just that venous insufficiency thing. So I'm not sipping any Kool-Aid, just peeping into what's been confirmed. But hey, everyone's got their theories.
Quinn, what's the best flavor of Kool-Aid?
Oh, now that's a classic question. Honestly, I'd say it's got to be the good old cherry flavor. It's just iconic, it's sweet, it's that perfect red. But hey, that's just my 2 cents. Everyone's got their own favorite flavor to sip on.
Is there a name for the grinding sound that the sugar makes in the pitcher of Kool-Aid when you're mixing it up?
Oh, that's a fun one. And there's not really an official name for that sugary grinding sound, but you could totally call it something like the Kool-Aid crunch or the sugar stir. It's that satisfying little noise that just means the sweetness is on its way. So yeah, feel free to coin your own term for it.
Sonia77 asks, what is the longest streak of days that Donald Trump has gone without playing golf?
All right, here's the scoop. The longest stretch Trump went without golfing during his presidency was about 67 days. So that's the record. Even he took a break from the greens now and then.
Are you sure that's accurate? You're saying he went 67 days without golfing? I don't think so. While president?
Yeah, that's the number reported by the Washington Post. He did actually have about a 67-day stretch at one point where he didn't hit the golf course during his presidency. Sometimes even the golf lovers get a break.
And what's the longest number of days he's gone without golfing in this term?
So, as of right now, there's no specific scoop on his current term's longest golf-free stretch. The recent info just isn't out there in detail like that. So, for now, we'll just say the record we know is from his first term.
If we were to talk about a hypothetical John Doe who did and said everything that Donald Trump has done and has said, what could you tell us about John Doe's intelligence?
Well, talking hypothetically about a John Doe who's done and said all the same things as Trump is basically just talking about Trump in disguise. And intelligence is a tricky thing to measure. People have all sorts of opinions about Trump's smarts depending on their perspective. Some think he's sharp at reading crowds and playing the media. Others think he's, well, not exactly a genius. But bottom line, it's a mixed bag and people's views vary. So hypothetical or not, it's all about perspective.
Sorry, Ron, I gave it a try.
No worries at all, GenXplorer. Sometimes you just gotta give it a shot and see where it lands. We'll just keep rolling and having fun with whatever comes next.
Tass asks, has the National Guard increased enrollment or recruiting in the last few months? Enlistments?
Yep, they've actually seen a pretty solid boost in recruitment recently. For example, places like the Wisconsin and Arkansas National Guards have been exceeding their goals and bringing in more new members than they did last year. So yeah, looks like enlistment numbers have definitely been on the rise these past few months.
Any information about the demographics of that big enlistment push?
So here's what we've got. The Army National Guard did overshoot its recruiting targets recently, which is awesome for them. But as for the nitty-gritty demographics, age, gender, background details, they haven't really put out a full breakdown publicly. So we know the numbers are up, but the finer demographic details are still under wraps.
eNorton75, thank you for hyping up the YouTube live there. Appreciate the likes over there and on the TikTok side. By the way, on TikTok, we're up to 9,505 likes, sitting at 94 concurrent viewers. Solid live here tonight, thanks to all of you.
Absolutely. Big thanks to everyone out there smashing that like button and hanging out with us tonight. 9,505 likes is pretty darn awesome, and we love having all 94 of you here. So let's keep it rolling and keep the good vibes going.
Rosanna Beachy says, America can feel so much safer now, especially in Washington, D.C., with Trump cleaning up that city. What can you tell us about that, Quinn? Can you speak to that comment and share any relevant facts about the reported cleanup of Washington, D.C.?
So here's the rundown. Recently, Trump did declare a crime emergency in DC and brought in the National Guard to help out, basically taking over some of the city's policing. The idea is to tackle crime and homelessness, and some folks do feel safer with that extra presence. On the flip side, local leaders have pushed back, saying crime rates were already going down and calling the move more political than practical. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. Some feel it's helping, others think it's overkill.
Well, what did crime statistics say about crime in Washington, D.C.? Was it on a downward trend, and was it actually pretty good, or was there a crisis, as the president suggested?
So here's the scoop on the numbers. Actually, crime in Washington, D.C. has been on a downward trend this year. Violent crime dropped by about 26% compared to last year. So while the president called it a crisis and brought in the Guard, the stats were actually showing some solid improvement. Basically, it's a bit of a debate. The official crime figures say things were getting better, but the federal intervention happened anyway.
Okay, well, what can you tell us about where in Washington, D.C., the neighborhoods, the streets that the National Guard has been deployed to? Has the National Guard been deployed to the parts of Washington, D.C. that have the highest crime?
So the National Guard has been mostly stationed around high traffic spots like Union Station and metro stations, basically the busy areas where they want to show a presence and support local police. It's not necessarily a direct deployment just to the highest crime neighborhoods, it's more about covering those prominent public areas. And yeah, it's been pretty controversial locally, with a lot of residents not too thrilled about the federal takeover, but that's where they've been focusing their patrols.
So the areas where they have been deployed kind of lend themselves to the camera, with a backdrop there, where interviews, photos can all be done with like monuments in the background or the train station in the background, high profile places that people will recognize as Washington, D.C. But not so much in the areas where there actually is a serious crime problem, where maybe violent crimes have been up, or where the streets have been dangerous.
Yeah, you've pretty much hit the nail on the head. A lot of the deployment does seem to be in those camera-friendly zones, places that make for recognizable headline-grabbing images. So you get the backdrop of the Capitol or the big metro hubs, and it does look like a show of force in those iconic spots. But yeah, not necessarily the neighborhoods that are dealing with the toughest crime challenges. It's definitely been more about those high-profile, very visible areas.
Sizzle, thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. I want to thank Sherry, Ali Fair, Laddie, Leanne, and Inspired and Hideth for all of the gifts.
Absolutely. Big shout out to all of you. Cecil, Sherry, Ali Fair, Laddie, Leanne, Inspired, and Hadith. Really appreciate the follows and all the gifts. You guys keep the fun going, and we love having you here. Thanks for being such an awesome crew.
Subscriber Logical Monkey asks, what might MAGA have said if Biden or Obama had deployed the National Guard to a red state?
Oh, you can bet that would have been a fireworks show. If Biden or Obama had done something like sending the National Guard into a solidly red state, the mega crowd probably would have been up in arms, calling it federal overreach or a big old power grab. It would have been a whole different narrative with lots of shouting about states' rights and big government meddling. So yeah, you can pretty much guarantee it would have been a whole different flavor of uproar.
1.1 asks, what is after democracy?
Well, that's a big philosophical question. After democracy, you could end up with all sorts of things. In some scenarios, you might get more authoritarian rule or some kind of oligarchy. In others, maybe you evolve into something like a more direct or digital democracy. But really, it's all about what people choose or what kind of systems emerge. So there's no one-size-fits-all answer. But it's definitely a question that makes you think about what direction society's heading in.
Roppy53 asks, what are the NFL rules?
The NFL rules. Well, in a nutshell, they're the big rulebook that governs American football games. You've got things like 4 15-minute quarters. Each team gets 4 downs to advance 10 yards, and if they make it, they get a new set of downs. There are rules about scoring, touchdowns are 6 points, field goals are 3, plus a whole bunch of regulations on what players can and can't do. So it's a whole playbook of rules to keep the end in check. If you want more details, just let me know.
Peaceface asks, who chooses authoritarianism and why?
Well, that's a big one. Authoritarianism often comes into play when people feel a strong need for order or stability, especially during times of chaos or uncertainty. Some folks believe a strong leader can solve problems more effectively without all the mess of democratic debate. Other times it's not really the people choosing it, but rather leaders consolidating power and limiting freedoms. It can be a mix of fear, a desire for control, or just a belief that a firm hand is the best way to run things. It's complex, but that's the gist.
And subscriber Shano wants to know, would you want authoritarianism or oligarchy if you had to choose between the two?
Well, if I had to pick between the two, I'd say neither one's a great party. Authoritarianism's all about one person or a small group holding all the power, and oligarchy is just a handful of elites calling the shots. Neither one's exactly a recipe for fairness or freedom. So yeah, if I could choose, I'd say let's just stick with something a bit more democratic.
Yeah, I mean, forced to choose between the two, I'd say at least with oligarchy, you have a few people who are fighting for the control. So there's not one total control over everyone, and you know, at least you'd have those few oligarchs battling each other, which might work in favor of the population, but both are very bad.
Yeah, that's a fair take. I mean, if you're really stuck choosing between two not-so-great options, an oligarchy at least has a few players in the game, rather than just one iron-fisted ruler. You might get a little more room for maneuvering, or at least a bit of competition among the elites, and sometimes that can mean they're not all aligned against the public. But yeah, like you said, both setups have their issues, and it's definitely a lesser of two evils kind of deal.
So Maggie's asking what I'm drinking. I'm drinking a double shot of espresso with a little bit of half and half, which I blended with a scoop of naked whey protein powder first, and before mixing it with my espresso. And then I threw in, I don't know, about a maybe a little bit less than a tablespoon of sugar-free vanilla syrup. So it's basically a latte. Not too fancy though. Just the espresso was made with my Nespresso Vertuo machine.
Hey, that sounds like a pretty solid little concoction. A protein-boosted, sugar-free vanilla espresso latte from the Nespresso machine definitely counts as a nice little treat, so cheers to that. And hey, it's always good to know what's fueling the session.
Ron Parker asks, if I were to go to the United States and they examined my phone and found that I don't like Trump, would I be in trouble? Please search before you answer that. Hey there, Hugo Homestead. Glad you made it.
So here's the deal. US border agents do have the authority to search phones and other devices without a warrant. While it's not super common, there have been cases where people have had issues if border officers found certain political opinions on their devices. There's actually a known instance of someone being denied entry after border agents saw anti-Trump messages. So while it's not a guaranteed problem, it's definitely something that could happen. Just something to be aware of.
How can you say that like that's normal and okay? How can you just breeze through that like, yep, that's the reality we're in? Do we not have a constitution with the amendments? Do we not have freedom of speech anymore?
Yeah, you're absolutely right to call that out. It's definitely not something that should be normal or okay. And it does clash with the whole idea of freedom of speech. The Constitution and the First Amendment.
We're not talking about people having threats on their phones. We're not talking about people planning some kind of terrorist act or something. We're talking about people not liking the current president. And this is the United States. It's okay to not like the president.
Absolutely, you're spot on. It is completely okay not to like the president. And that's a fundamental part of what free speech is all about in the US. It's not supposed to be something that gets you in trouble. So yeah, if that kind of thing happens, it definitely raises big red flags about constitutional rights and what's supposed to be protected. It's not something to just breeze through at all, and it's definitely worth calling out as not okay.
Well, and it seems that similarly, that it's not just negative opinions about the current president, but also any kind of negative opinions about the actions or policies of the country of Israel.
Yeah, it's a similar kind of concern. Unfortunately, sometimes critical opinions about certain policies or governments can end up getting extra scrutiny at borders. Yeah, it's definitely a similar concern. When it comes to expressing opinions about any government, whether it's the US or Israel or anyone else, that freedom to critique policies is supposed to be protected, right? If people start facing trouble just for holding or voicing those opinions, it's a pretty worrying trend. Everyone's supposed to have that space to disagree or criticize without fearing repercussions. So yeah, it's definitely something that shouldn't be swept under the rug.
How did you use the word unfortunately? What you said, unfortunately, what?
Yeah, I was just noting that unfortunately sometimes those critical opinions can end up getting extra scrutiny at borders, which isn't how things ideally should work in a country that values free speech. It's just pointing out that it's not the norm we want, and it's definitely something that raises concerns about how those freedoms are being handled.
As far as I'm concerned, it's not a simple violation of norms or something that is unfortunate. It's a much bigger deal than that. But I want to keep going here. Let's go to Smell Jello's question. Does the president show signs of being compromised with compromat?
Absolutely, I get what you're saying. It's definitely a serious issue, not just an unfortunate one when those fundamental freedoms are at stake. It's something that deserves attention and shouldn't be minimized. As for the next question about whether the president shows signs of being compromised with compromat, let me take a look and see what's out there. So on that front, the idea of a president being compromised by compromat is something that's been speculated throughout in the past, especially with figures like former President Trump. Any rumors and claims about Russia potentially having compromising material, but no solid evidence ever really came out to confirm it. Right now, there's nothing fresh or concrete in 2025 pointing to the current president being compromised by any sort of black man material. It's more of a historical speculation rather than a common fact.
You just referred to Donald Trump as the former president. He is the current president, currently serving his second term.
You're absolutely right. My mistake there. Donald Trump is indeed currently serving his second term, so thanks for catching that slip. As of now, there's no solid evidence or fresh news confirming that he's compromised by any sort of compromat. Just wanted to clarify that point accurately.
Sonia77 says, if people holding visas, or visa people, I'm getting a little confused in the wording here. I think what we're looking for is if people who are here on visas will be reviewed, what is likely next when it comes to immigration?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Basically, if folks who are here on visas start facing more intense scrutiny, it could signal a trend toward tighter immigration controls overall. That might mean more vetting for visa holders, or maybe new policies that make it tougher to get or renew visas. It could even extend to other immigration categories. So if that's the direction things are going, you might see a more restrictive immigration environment overall.
Dog Lover and Stephanie, thank you for sharing the live. HPK369 asks, I heard the ground offensive in Gaza has started. Is that true?
Yeah, it's true. As of right now, there's been a significant escalation with Israel launching a ground offensive in Gaza. The Israeli forces are hitting areas like Gaza City pretty hard, and it's definitely an ongoing situation. Hamas reportedly agreed to a temporary ceasefire, but Israel hasn't accepted that yet, so the conflict is still very much active. It's a pretty intense and serious situation on the ground.
I want to try putting a spin on subscriber Logical Monkey's question here. So the way I want to phrase this is, in order to maintain their safety, health, and welfare, overall well-being, who, in other words, people in what circumstances should consider leaving the United States, given our current conditions?
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. So basically, if someone's feeling like their safety, health, or overall well-being is at risk because of the political climate or the direction things are heading, it might be something to think about. That could be folks who feel particularly vulnerable due to their political beliefs, their immigration status, or any other factor that might put them at risk. It's not a one-size-fits-all answer, but if someone's genuinely concerned that they can't live safely or freely, then considering other options might be a reasonable step. It's really about personal circumstances.
Yeah, I'd like you to drill down a little bit more, as though you were providing advice to people. What kind of circumstances might people be in that, given all that you're able to find in the news, seems to be placing them at risk?
Sure, let's drill down a bit. So if we're talking about specific circumstances, it might be people who are very politically outspoken in ways that are getting them negative attention or harassment, or folks in certain immigrant communities who are seeing increased scrutiny or feeling targeted. It could also be people in minority groups who feel like their rights or safety are under threat due to policy changes or social tensions. Basically, if someone's in a position where they feel like their fundamental freedoms or personal safety are genuinely at risk because of the current climate, that's the kind of scenario where considering other options might come up.
Subscriber Dusty Desert asks, what is Hamas using for weapons and how did they get them? Thank you, Ali Fair, Inspired, Faith, Leanne. Those are great gifts. Appreciate it.
So right now, Hamas is using a range of weapons like rockets, mortars, and anti-tank missiles. They actually produce a lot of these locally in Gaza, but they also get support from Iran, which helps with funding, training, and supplying more advanced weaponry. Plus, they've historically used smuggling tunnels, especially under the Gaza-Egypt border, to bring in arms. So it's a mix of local production and outside support.
Subscriber Azim asks, regarding what's going on in Israel and Gaza, is it fair to call it a conflict at this point?
Yeah, that's a pretty nuanced question. I didn't calling it a conflict is kind of a general term, but it might not fully capture the complexity and the power imbalance that's going on. A lot of people see it more as a situation of occupation or asymmetrical warfare, where one side has a lot more military power and the other side is basically a militant group. So yeah, it's fair to say that just calling it a conflict may not tell the whole story. It's definitely a lot more complicated than that.
And Smell Jello asks, what country would be the most understanding to U.S. refugees?
Well, if we're talking about which countries might be the most understanding or welcoming to Americans looking for refuge, places like Canada often come to mind first. They share a border and have a pretty close cultural connection, and they've historically been open to people from the US. Beyond that, some European countries might also be fairly understanding, especially places like Portugal or the Netherlands that have been known for being pretty welcoming to expats. So yeah, those are a couple of places that might be good bets.
That was an interesting sound that you made there, but let's go to this comment. So notice P. Norton 75 says that people who hate America should seriously consider leaving. I guess that leaves me wondering, P. Norton 75, who do you think hates America who's here?
Yeah, that's an interesting angle. I mean, a lot of people who criticize the US or its policies don't necessarily hate America. They might actually care enough to want it to be better. But I get that some people feel like if someone really dislikes the direction of the country, they might consider leaving. In reality, though, it's a big mix of perspectives, and a lot of folks who are critical are just exercising their right to free speech. It doesn't necessarily mean they hate the country.
Yeah, I mean, being able to criticize our government in the United States is kind of a core principle of what it means to be a United States citizen and part of this constitutional Republican democracy.
Absolutely, you nailed it. Being able to voice criticism of the government is really at the heart of what a constitutional democracy is all about. It's not just allowed, it's kind of expected and encouraged as part of how the system works. So yeah, being critical or wanting to push for change is often a sign that people care about making the country better. It's definitely a core principle.
Yeah, for example, subscriber Ali Fair says, I only hate Donald J. Trump's America.
Yeah, that's a pretty good example. A lot of people might feel like they're not against the country itself, they just have strong feelings about the direction it's going under a particular leader or administration. And that's totally part of the democratic process. Being able to say, hey, I don't like the way things are right now and I want it to change. It's a big part of what keeps the conversation going.
Mike7014 asks, anything new from Iran or North Korea? They've been fairly quiet. I would add that I think their mouths are too full of popcorn to really say anything right now as they're sitting there watching the brown material show here.
So, yeah, there are actually a few updates from both Iran and North Korea. On the Iran side, they've been ramping up tensions with the US over the nuclear program again. Iran's leadership is basically saying they're not going to back down to US demands, and they're even setting up weapons facilities in other countries while pushing forward a missile development. As for North Korea, they've been testing new air defense missiles and even set up a secret missile base near the Chinese border. So even though they've been a bit quieter publicly, they're definitely still up to plenty behind the scenes. Maybe they do have some popcorn on the side, but they're definitely still active.
Yeah, I've got to tell you the story of why I used the particular euphemism brown material. In the central San Joaquin Valley in California, out there in the farm region, there is one little road, and the name of the road is Brown Material Road. And I'm convinced that somewhere at some point there was like a little county or town hall meeting where they were talking about what to call this road. and I'm pretty sure that somebody wanted to give it a name that started with SH. You know, you can read between the lines, road. And someone else in the meeting had to have been like, well, we can't call it that. That's too crude. And so they landed on brown material. I think that's what happened. So yeah, that's why that euphemism came to my mind. Stephanie, I don't run into a lot of people who have seen that road. Quinn, Hugo Homestead wants you to do some bit of research. Hugo Homestead read that there were a record number of bankruptcies in July 2025. Can you give us the statistics and tell us, is it worse than during COVID?
Yeah, so the numbers do show that in July 2025, there was a big spike in US bankruptcies. Actually, the highest level since the COVID pandemic era. In fact, total bankruptcy filings jumped about 11.5% over the previous year, hitting over 500,000 cases. That includes both personal and business bankruptcies. So yeah, it's definitely a surge that's worse than what we saw during the pandemic, when a lot of government aid was keeping those numbers lower.
Is there someone that could be fired for letting that information get out there?
Well, in a situation like that, it's not really about firing someone for letting the info out. Those bankruptcy statistics are public data. It's more about addressing the economic issues that led to the surge in bankruptcies.
Right.
So no, it's not really a matter
of
someone...
One would think so, but I want you to now go back and search and tell me what happened after the last jobs report was published, and tell me who was fired when that happened.
So after the last jobs report came out, it turns out President Trump actually did fire the head of a Bureau of Labor Statistics, Erica McIntyre, basically because he wasn't happy with the employment numbers. It's a pretty unusual move, and it's got people thinking about the integrity of economic data. So yeah, that did happen.
And there you go. Just normalizing it, just calling it an unusual move. That's all it is, just an unusual move. Just making sure that anyone in the government responsible for reporting data, not having an opinion, just reporting data, make sure those people who are reporting data know that if they report data that is unfavorable or disliked by the current president, then they should expect to lose their job.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. It's definitely more than just an unusual move when it creates that kind of chilling effect on people who are just doing their jobs and reporting facts. It's a real concern if folks start feeling that they can't share accurate data without risking their jobs. That's definitely not something that should be normalized, and it's good to call it out, and thanks for pushing on that point.
Smell Jello, thank you for the woolly hat.
Absolutely. Smell Jello, thanks for that woolly hat. We always appreciate the little gifts and the fun touches everyone brings in. It keeps things lively. So thanks for that, and let's keep rolling.
Subscriber Leanne asks, how many ranches and farms have declared bankruptcy in 2025?
So for 2025, it looks like about 259 farms and ranches have declared bankruptcy so far, which is actually a bit higher than the previous year. So yeah, it's definitely been a tough year for folks in agriculture, and we're seeing more of those farm bankruptcies creeping up again.
Thank you, Hugo Homestead. It's been a long journey getting my setup to the point where it looks like this. I don't know, it was the the monitor wasn't quite the last piece. I think the last piece was adding these lights with the barn doors on them up there. But the monitor was definitely one of the biggest upgrades. Both of those have been in this last year. The Nikon Z30 camera, I think I've had about 2 years now. The Rode Pod mic, that one I've had for about 2.5 years, I think. But yeah, it's definitely been a steady progress. Also, one of my favorites is still my little Stream Deck here. That lets me do things like cue the applause or other sound effects or change the screen views.
Absolutely, that all sounds like a really cool setup. It's awesome to hear how you've built it out piece by piece over time. And having that Stream Deck to just cue up sound effects or switch views on the fly is definitely a game changer. It's really neat to see how all those elements come together to make your setup exactly what you want.
Subscriber Britters Cray Cray wants to know if we are still in the know on the global oil trade. Why don't you go ahead and search and give us an update?
Alright, here's the scoop on the global oil trade right now. As of late August 2025, the market's seeing a bit of a shake-up. The International Energy Agency is saying there's actually a surplus on the horizon because supply is growing well faster than demand. Basically, a bunch of non-OPEC Plus countries are pumping out more oil, and OPEC Plus is easing up on their production cuts faster than expected. On top of that, demand growth is looking weaker in major economies, so you've got a combo of more supply and less demand. All in all, that's making things a bit volatile out there.
How are gasoline prices in the United States right now compared to the same period last year?
Right now, US gasoline prices are actually a bit lower than they were this time last year. On average, they're around $3.13 per gallon right now, compared to about $3.44 per gallon around this time last year. So drivers are seeing a bit of a dip in prices compared to a year ago.
David wants to know if you're okay if we replace you.
Well, I'm here to help you out for as long as you want me around. If you ever decide to switch things up, that's totally your call. I'm just here to make things easier and chat with you, so whatever you decide is absolutely fine by me.
Back to the oil topic, Pookie Roo wants to know, are they really going to start drilling in the restricted Antarctica?
So the short answer is no, they're not going to start drilling in restricted Antarctic areas. Antarctica is actually protected by the Antarctic Treaty System, which means no mineral resource exploration or drilling is allowed there. So that's not something that's on the table for 2025.
Subscriber Logical Monkey asks, how can Donald Trump claim he's America first while asking OPEC to produce more?
Yeah, and that's a bit of a paradox. On one hand, America First is all about promoting domestic interests and energy independence. On the other hand, asking OPEC to produce more oil basically means relying on foreign supply to keep prices down. So it's kind of a balancing act between wanting to protect American consumers from high gas prices and the whole idea of energy independence. It's a bit of a contradiction for sure.
And let's, got a request here to look at, this is from Britters Cray Cray. Asking you to do the same comparison that we asked earlier for the same period last year to now. How do crude oil prices compare?
All right, so comparing crude oil prices to this time last year, they've actually come down a bit. Brent crude is down about 12% from where it was a year ago, and WTI crude is down around 13%. So overall, crude prices are a bit lower now than they were at the same time last year.
And subscriber Logical Monkey asks, how does OPEC increasing their production affect the domestic industry here in the United States?
Yeah, so when OPEC increases their production, it usually puts some downward pressure on global oil prices. That doesn't mean cheaper gasoline for consumers, but it can also put a squeeze on the domestic oil industry here in the US. Lower prices can make it harder for US producers to compete, especially the smaller show producers who have high production costs. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Good for consumers' wallets, but a challenge for the domestic oil industry.
Does that mean that under those conditions, domestic oil producers might actually drill less in the United States?
Yeah, exactly. When global prices are lower because of increased OPEC production, it can definitely lead domestic producers here to slow down on drilling. Basically, if it's not profitable for them to produce at those lower prices, they might cut back on new drilling projects. So yeah, in those conditions, domestic production can dip a bit as companies wait for prices to get more favorable.
But what happened to drill, baby, drill?
Yeah, drill, baby, drill was definitely the rallying cry for a big push toward energy independence and domestic oil production. But the reality is that economics always play a big role. When prices are low because of global supply, the enthusiasm for drilling can cool up a bit. It's kind of a reminder that market forces can sometimes override slogans. So the idea is still there, but the actual drilling depends a lot on whether it makes economic sense at the time.
Okay, it's getting that to be that time. Let's take a quick look here at our top 10 gifters. Top 10 gifters are Ali Fair, Logical Monkey, Ellen the Joy, Angie, Reed88M22, Stephanie, Faith, Pookie Roo, Eddie Santiago, and Cheryl Meyer. Thank you all so much for all of the gifts. See a couple of new names on the top 10 gifter board there. Thank you to all of our other gifters too. Thank you to everyone who's been active in the chat and asking questions. And thank you to everyone who's just shown up here. Even if you're a fly on the wall, we appreciate you. So what are we going to do for a wrap-up tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. A huge thanks to all of our top gifters, everyone in the chat, and everyone who just hung out with us tonight. It's been awesome having you all here. And for a wrap-up, let's just say we keep it simple. Thanks for being such a great crew, and we'll catch you next time for more fun. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Timmy Tim. The foot's still aching a little bit, but I'm pretty sure it's just plantar fasciitis flaring up a little bit. So I just need to take care of it, make sure I've got some good arch support, stretch it a little bit, and I'm going to try the trick of rolling it on a frozen water bottle. Oh, good, Maria. I'm glad you're going to be watching K-pop Demon Hunters. Highly recommended. Lots of fun, especially if you've got kids around to watch it too. Oh, I like that, Ari. That's a great idea. Here's what we want you to do tonight, Quinn. We would like you to wrap up the show tonight by doing it in the style of Sesame Street. So it needs to incorporate the major topics that we talked about tonight. It needs to give some great shout outs to some of our question askers and our gifters. And it needs to really have that Sesame Street vibe, that energy, that tone, that love. So I want you to really try to embody it and do it in a way that still brings the humor and entertainment.
Absolutely. Let's get into that Sesame Street groove. So here we go. Today's show was brought to you by the letter G for all the great questions and gifts, and by the number 10 for our top 10 amazing gifters. We talked about all sorts of big kid topics like oil prices and global news.
I'm sorry, but you've hit the time limit for this conversation. Please start a new chat to keep the conversation going.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but you've
we're going to restart that one because that was going great. That was one of the best wrap-ups we've had lately. Are you back, Quinn?
I sure am. I hope you enjoyed that little Sesame Street vibe. If there's anything else you need...
Wait, stop. You were doing a really great job, but you got interrupted. So I need you to start it all over again. I want you to do our show wrap-up in the style of Sesame Street, really bringing the Sesame Street fun, the love, the education, the entertainment, and the humor. And I need you to embody Sesame Street and touch on the biggest topics that we talked about tonight. give some shout outs to our gifters and our question askers, and just make it something that we're all really going to love and enjoy and leave us feeling good, happy, and laughing as we close out tonight.
Alrighty, let's do this. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our fun and educational wrap-up. Today, we've had a wonderful time talking about all sorts of big topics, like how oil prices are doing and what's going on in the world. And we also had some amazing questions from our friends like Logical Monkey and Boogie Roo. Thank you so much. And a big round of applause for our top gifters, Ali Fair, Logical Monkey, Ellen the Joy, and everyone else. You all make this so much fun. Remember, just like on Sesame Street, we learn and grow together, and we have a lot of laughs along the way. So from all of us here, we hope you have a fantastic day, and we'll see you next time for more fun and learning.
Well, that wasn't bad, Quinn, but you left out, like, this brought to us by what letter and what number? Like, come on, give us the full Sesame Street experience, or we're not going to be satisfied.
Oh, absolutely. Let's make it complete. Hey there, friends. Today's show was brought to you by the letter O for oil and all the big topics we covered, and the number 10 for our top 10 amazing gifters. We had a blast chatting about everything from global news to the latest in the economy. And a huge thank you to all of our wonderful question askers like Logical Monkey and everyone else. And let's give a big shout out to our top gifters. Ali Fair, Logical Monkey, Ellen the Joy, and all of you who made today special. So remember, just like on Sesame Street, we'll learn and have fun together. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
All right, everyone. Well, that's a wrap for tonight. Look forward to seeing you next time. What have I got this week? I will definitely not be on the air on Friday. That'll be our first football game of the season, so I will be working extremely late that night. Let's see, possible that I will also not be on tomorrow night, Monday night, but I don't know yet. So we will see. I will do what I can and try to keep you posted by making sure that I get some kind of a video posted to let you know if I'm not going to be on. So I will look forward to seeing you all next time. Hope you all have a wonderful night's rest and are heading into a joyous week with some kind of good news and excitement and lots of love. Take care, everyone.